I kind of use those influences of, eating out and knowing what I kind of grew up with and fusing it together, which is how we developed the menu at Zaab. But like the flavors that I grew up with, I really tried to keep it in our food and on this menu. And I have had a lot of comments from customers saying, the flavors are quite bold, quite strong, which is what I wanted. So I guess, my parents play a big part in this restaurant.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. The engine room of Australia's hospitality industry runs on the energy and commitment of family-run local restaurants. Hubs of the community, a place where all family members roll up their sleeves, welcome diners into their home, and do whatever it takes to ensure they return. These restaurants are the foundation for the next generation of hospo professionals to take everything they've learned growing up and deliver it in a modern context. It's colouring our culinary landscape in such a beautiful way. Becky Khanthavongsa is the owner of Zaab Street Food. Becky, how are you going?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. You've just had a whirlwind weekend with Valentine's Day. How was it?
Oh, it was great. It was busy. A little bit different to last year for so many different reasons. But we had our pre-Valentine's Day people on Saturday, so we had groups of singles come through. We had plenty of couples come through on the Saturday, and then the Sunday it was just a loved up day.
You mentioned that it was different for so many reasons, and obviously the world has changed a bit since last Valentine's Day. How different was it trying to operate in the circumstances we find ourselves compared to last Valentine's Day?
Yeah, well, obviously with COVID, capacity has reduced by a lot, by half for us actually. So we've had to, I guess, structure it in a way where we would be able to allow as many people come through as possible and still be able to, I guess, experience our offering. So this year we were taking bookings only, no walk-ins, and everyone was on a set menu. So for us, in terms of operating the business, it was different, but it was very structured, very efficient, and very nice, actually. A bit of a change for us.
Well, structure is something that a lot of operators have had to change or adapt to a new structure in the last year. That's something that you had to face in the early period of sort of lockdowns and stuff like that. What did you do to introduce and change the structure of what you were doing at Zaab in sort of March, April last year?
Yep, definitely. So I guess just a little bit of context. We at Zaab, we had a bit of a mixed menu where we had really casual food, street style stuff, some authentic Thai dishes as well, because Thai and Lao is our background. And then we had a little bit more of, I guess, the modern take where we would plate it up quite nicely. When COVID hit, we were already through our transition to do a little bit more of the modern, finer dishes. But when COVID hit, we had to really dial it back. And introduce takeaway. So we kind of had to go back to our roots, I guess, well, my roots especially in takeaway and franchising, and pick and choose the dishes, I guess, that were transportable, easily transportable, but also offer it in a way that was, I guess, adaptable to the current environment. So at the time, everyone was in isolation. You were by yourself, you were with one other person. So we started offering pretty early up what we called our date night pack. So it was basically a dinner for two, which included cocktails as well. So generally, you're not allowed to take away alcohol, but liquor licensing, we're able to flip our license and allow takeaway cocktails. We were able to do that in our little pouches. So it was basically replicating purchasing drinks in the streets of Southeast Asia. And so we packaged up dinner for two with some cocktails. And honestly, that's what kept us alive during lockdown. It became very, very popular. And the amount of packs that we were selling, it caught me off guard. We sold out probably in the first 2 nights just because we didn't anticipate it going so well. And then we just slowly had to increase and I guess adjust to the amount of demand that was coming through for that. So that was, yeah, it was a lot of hard work on our end getting the systems up and running so people could order and, putting all of the marketing together, but we got it done.
Did the lessons that you learned during that time and the model that you created, did that continue beyond, and is that part of your business model now?
Yes, definitely. So as restrictions started to ease and we started to open up the restaurant again, I kind of decided to take a more long-term path. So what I chose to do, because the takeaways did so well, was to keep the takeaway platform. However, I separated it out from our dining platform. So it's essentially two different businesses operating from the same venue. So that way we were able to offer, I guess, a little bit more in the takeaway, but not lack anything in the dining scene as well.
You've got a really interesting background, and it's eventuated in this model at Zaab that we can dive deep into a bit further on. But you grew up in a Thai restaurant with your family, and then you ran a franchise operation. I just want to touch on that first. What led to the move to do a franchise restaurant?
So I grew up with my parents' business. They opened it when I was 17, so just finishing up year 12. And I enjoyed, I guess, working in the restaurant and the business aspect of it because I was studying accounting. I guess my mum or my parents just kind of let me take control of the back end of things, which was really cool to learn really early on. However, coming from a family restaurant environment, there's not a lot of structure in operations. We just do things the way we know how to do it. Mum says do that, dad says do that. So you just do it. And that's what everyone was doing. And it was nice. We knew what we were doing and we just do it. But I guess the reason why I really wanted to get into franchising straight after was because I knew they had systems up and running. So, places like McDonald's, KFC, Subway, you could see that it was very systemized. You were hiring people quite young and you had a great training program, and that's what I wanted to learn. So I actually joined the Zambrero group when they were early on as part of the support office, started in their finance area because that's my background, but then transitioned into operations where I actually learned so much about creating the systems, actually. So, things from costing of the food to the training cards that we had to go through step by step so that we can actually train the young ones. So, I think that both the family side of things where everything is just done so freely and then going into a very systemized environment kind of allowed me to be very agile in what I do today.
Those systems that you learn at that time, how important a role do they play with the structure with the restaurant that you have now?
Oh my God. So basically very crucial. So I actually had not worked in any other hospo venue prior to opening up Zaab, so I didn't actually know how other venues operated. But using my experience, I was able to, I guess, walk myself through the processes or the steps from when a customer walks in the door to when the customer leaves. So, for example, when I was in the franchise, it was a 3-minute transaction, right? So from when you greet the customer through to when they pay and take the product. But in a restaurant environment, obviously, it's a 2-hour It's 2 hours, so you have to kind of break everything down and then write it out. So you're walking through each step when a customer comes through the door. You write it down, you break it down, and you turn it into training cards. And so that way I'm able to train my staff, because I actually hire a lot of younger, non-experienced staff as well. Yeah, and so this is able to translate into both the dining in experience, but also when we flipped into takeaway for COVID as well. So just, I guess, identifying all of the steps, breaking it down and really putting it down on paper so that, we could get everything out.
Tell us about the food of your parents and your background growing up. How important a role have they played with your love of food?
Oh my gosh. Everything. So they are my inspiration. Without them, we wouldn't have Zaab today. So my parents are both from Laos. Dad is from the capital, Vientiane, and mum is from northern Laos, so closer to the Golden Triangle, bordering Chiang Mai in Thailand. And they actually met and married here, came as refugees with nothing but a suitcase and their siblings. So when they arrived, they had to basically hustle. My dad worked 3 jobs at one stage and my mum worked 2. So obviously their second job was both at a restaurant. So a Thai restaurant. So that's where my dad had no idea how to cook. And then he learned how to, started off washing dishes or whatever. And then slowly started to learn, I guess, cooking. And my mum was front of house. So she was waitressing at the time. And so they did that for probably about a decade before they decided they wanted to open up a restaurant. And this is really important to me because they wanted to allow their children to be able to have, I guess, things that other kids were able to have, because their parents would have the money. So that was really important to me. My mum cooks mostly Lao food. So when we were growing up, we would just, she would spoil us because her cooking of Lao food was really good. And Lao food and Thai food are different in that Lao is a little bit more, I guess, more earthy, more like fermented kind of products or preserved products because we're landlocked. There's no seafood. So there's that. And then my dad is mostly of Thai food because he learned from the Thai restaurants that he worked in. So that's where I guess my the background of Zaab is both Lao and Thai. So it stems from both my mum and my dad. And then you've got me who's brought in, I guess, that modern aspect. Not that I know how to cook, but I like to eat out a lot. So I kind of use those influences of, eating out and knowing what I kind of grew up with and fusing it together, which is how we developed the menu at Zaab. But like the flavors that I grew up with, I really tried to keep it in our food and on this menu. And it has, I have had a lot of comments from customers saying, the flavors are quite bold, quite strong, which is what I wanted. So I guess, my parents play a big part in this restaurant.
There's a lot of Thai restaurants, particularly in Sydney. Australia is blessed with many of them, but we don't have a lot of Lao. Can you tell us about a couple of dishes growing up to give us an example of how the cuisine is quite different to Thai?
Yeah, of course. So Lao food for me, and I think for a lot of people, when you think of Lao food, one of the first dishes that you think of is pawpaw salad. Right, so in Thai it's called som tam, but in Lao it's called tamakung, and it's basically they both use raw green pawpaw that is shredded, and both have a citrus base. But then the ingredients differ in that a Thai pawpaw salad would use things like palm sugar and shrimp or prawns. Dry shrimp is what we call it. So the ingredients are different, whereas a Lao would use a shrimp paste, which is like a preserved paste, and then the crab paste, and then anchovies. So you can already start to kind of imagine it's a little bit more saltier and complex in flavor, definitely a lot more earthy as well. So that's a really good example of the contrasting. So you've got quite bright and fresh, and then a lot more salty and pungent, I guess is the better word, in flavor for Lao food.
Tell us about Zaab Street Food. As you mentioned, it is a combination of both cuisines. How do you balance that? And tell us about the experience that one might have when they come there.
Yep. So Zaab Street Food, we've always aimed to offer, I guess, so street food, so skewers, things that you can eat with your hands. We really encourage eating with your hands. We have sticky rice on the menu, and that is our very casual approach to street food. But obviously, with the changing times and the position that where we are, we've had to adapt, I guess, to the market. And so we've got the fancier dishes as well. So you'll basically at Zaab, you'll get a very casual experience, but I like to say with quality and I guess upmarket style food. But in terms of the service, I just really wanted to keep it casual so it's approachable to everybody, but be able to provide dishes that they wouldn't have been able to try anywhere else, because it really just comes from, my childhood dishes and what I've learned from other venues when eating out as well. So it's a bit of a mix of both.
Is there any of your childhood dishes that star on the menu?
Yes. So the beef massaman is one of our most popular dishes on our menu. And if you've been coming to Zaab or going to my parents' restaurant, you know that it started there, right? So it basically was the favourite dish at the family restaurant, and it's now the favourite dish here. However, it has evolved into what it is now. A little bit fancier, a lot more quality, but still bomb flavours. Super good. And then the other thing in our street dishes, the pork skewers, I don't know. Every time I go back to Laos and to Thailand, I need to have those skewers with sticky rice. That is my childhood. And you can come to Zaab, you can get the skewers, sit at the bar, have it with a beer, have it with a cocktail. Delicious.
What's some of the challenges involved in running your own restaurant? You're situated in Braddon in Canberra, which is a very popular suburb for restaurants. What's been the challenges and also the positives in this sort of region with doing what you do?
Yep, so the challenges that I've faced in the last 4 years, I guess, was acceptance to begin with. So Zaab actually started off as a very different concept, a little bit more street, a little bit more dingy, I think is the right word, dark and loud. So replicating the streets of, say, for example, Bangkok. The price point at that time for us, being street food, you couldn't really price it as high. So, as a business, it was really hard, especially paying for rent in prime location. So that's why I had to make the decision to, I guess, evolve the restaurant and fuse a bit of two together. Right, when I say two, I'm meaning the higher priced point dishes, the dishes where people, are proud of taking photos of and they look great on camera, but also taste amazing as well. So that's where just before COVID, we had on our menu, we had, what do we have? The street stuff, and then we had a little bit fancy. We had to rebrand a little as well, just to kind of streamline where we were going with our food. So what I like to compare it to was I really like my sneakers. So, comparing it to, just your basic sneakers, joggers, whatever, no one really cares, to now you're like the Jordans, the Nike Jordans or the Yeezys. So we're a little bit more upmarket, but we're still casual and we're really nice. So that has been the involvement of the business. Finding staff for me has been really difficult because the way that we operate, my dad being head chef, he's not a qualified chef. So it's hard for me to find, I guess, someone who will understand the food and the flavors that we do, but also in the environment that we're doing it, because at the moment as well, we're operating a takeaway business and a dining in business in the same kitchen. So finding staff who can, I guess, understand or comprehend that is really difficult. But you know what? COVID has really been a blessing for our business in terms that we are able to now structure the way we are, because like I said, we went through a transition period where we had the street stuff and a little bit fancy, but now we're able to separate it out completely, where the restaurant is able to provide you a full experience that is the higher end style, but you're still able to get our street style dishes take away quite easily, so you're still able to experience a bit of both. And that's worked really well for us.
Most restaurants in Australia are small family-run businesses like yours, and as you just mentioned, your dad is the head chef as well. What's it like working with family, running the business? Are there challenges involved in that?
Oh my gosh, so much. I don't know where to start. I guess we worked together before in his restaurant. Right, so in the family restaurant, that was my parents' restaurant, so I was following their rules. And so when I decided to open up Zaab, I kind of had to really sit my parents down and explain to them that this is the concept that I want to do, this is the style of business I want to create, and I guess my end goal is not to just stick with one business similarly to what they did. Like I want to grow, right? I want to be able to continue to operate this business, but also grow in terms of like expansion and open up another one eventually, which means I won't be working in this business every day, mum and dad. That was really hard for them to understand. And then also in terms of like menu items as well, my mum to this day is like, why don't you put spring rolls on the menu, right? It's really good margins to put spring rolls. I'm like, Mum, that's not the kind of concept and not the kind of restaurant I want to put on. Or but Dad, so she actually really understands now. It's taken 3 years, but that's okay. But Dad's been really good because Dad's been part of the business from day one, and I try to explain to him, okay, presentation is a really big thing, Dad. For him, that's a big struggle because he never actually learned how, like different tips and techniques of when you learn in culinary school or when you actually learn with other chefs as well. It's always been him. He's owned his business, for the past decade before he came here. So it was, I guess, hard for him to grasp the concept of presentation, and we need to make it look really, really nice, and we need to try different styles of cooking as well. So it's definitely been a learning curve for him, but also the language that I use to try to get him to understand as well. So communication was quite important, but at the end of the day, I have a lot of respect for my parents, so I'm going to listen to what they say, but also try to educate them on what I've learned in my time as well. So we've been able to find that happy medium. So we're 4 years later, we're doing pretty well. However, don't get me wrong, we have definitely had our blow ups about work, especially me and my dad, so it has definitely been challenging, but I think respect and trust is our biggest foundation that we work on. So that's helped us through.
You mentioned how COVID in the last year has actually given you the time to restructure and think about the way you run your business and refine everything. Um, how has the last year or the last couple of years running a restaurant changed you?
It's really had to ground me. Hey, I so basically, you're running and operating your restaurant every day, and you're not really thinking about much except for how you're going to keep going, survivability. For me, during COVID, it really took me back to my roots. So even if we go back to lockdown, I had to start delivering food again. I was delivering food when I first got my P's at my parents' restaurant. So if that didn't take me back to my roots, I don't know what did. I refused to do takeaway pre-COVID because it didn't suit, I guess, the concept that I'm trying to teach my parents about. Or, we're trying to focus on the dining in. However, come COVID, we're bringing it all back. My roots, the takeaway, the simple stuff, the just slowing it down as well, just in your personal life, so that you can then focus on the business and other aspects of it. Like, I've slowed myself from working in day-to-day operations to, I guess, the background and working on the systems, because that's what made us succeed during COVID, was me working in the background and not, waitressing on the floor. So that's, for me personally, that's been a big step in just coming away from the customer service side of things and just focusing on in the background. So that's been good.
You've got a really interesting history with your parents, and they opened a restaurant as you were about to sort of leave home and go to university, and you yourself learnt business structure and accounting. What do you love about being in hospitality, given that it sort of came later as an option for you?
Yeah, it did. People. I think I just really enjoy people. Um, so the customer service aspect of it, when I was working at my parents' restaurant, I loved the interaction, building rapport, just having friends, but also not just the customer side of things, the team that you work with. So coming from a family restaurant, we were all family. And if you weren't, like, you had people coming in who then became your aunties and uncles. So it was a family environment that, I don't know, you just surround yourself with people who just love you and support you, want to do right by you. And I've managed to bring that family aspect over to Zaab as well, but still be able to incorporate, I guess, what I learned in franchising and in business, quite keeping things, yes, still very separate, but still being able to have, I guess, that relationship, that closeness with people. So that has been really good. And also just when my mum allowing me to focus on the back end of things in the family restaurant as well. So, doing all the books or running all the paperwork, as boring as it is, and I still hate it to this day. I actually like analyzing the numbers and seeing where you're at and what you can do to keep going forward. So that part of corporate has helped me a lot, actually.
You mentioned that you'd spoken to your parents about not having just one venue that you're going to be working in all the time, but perhaps expanding. Do you have any plans for the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, for the last year, I have been thinking about expansion, but there's, I guess, a lot to think about when you're one woman, and what kind of power you have, or not power, but what I have in my own ability to expand into another one. So, a lot of thoughts into my head was like, okay, do I go into partnership with other people, or do I continue to do it by myself? So I've basically been, having lots of conversations, checking out venues, just trying to set myself up for what opportunity comes next. For me, I'm not the kind of person who, will have just one plan kind of thing. So, like I said, I've started lots of different conversations just to kind of see what opportunity will come first and what I can jump at. So I can't give you anything solid right now, but definitely definitely I've got some stuff in the works.
Amazing. Well, very much look forward to seeing that. We've loved having you on Deep in the Weeds today to share your story. Becky, please keep in touch and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.